So for the UC Genome study, we're focusing on patients with metastatic disease. This is unfortunately the disease that is incurable in almost all patients and for which there are very limited therapies. And until recently, there have really been no major developments in the treatment of patients with metastatic disease over the last 3 decades. So the current standard of care for patients with metastatic disease is conventional chemotherapy. And although chemotherapy isn't associated with a survival benefit for patients, it does not cure patients, and therefore patients need subsequent therapies. Based on the fact that there are limited therapies for patients with metastatic disease, it's extraordinarily important to develop novel therapies for this patient population. And what we learned from the Cancer Genome Atlas experience in 2014 is that bladder cancer has many potential actionable alterations. And these are genetic events that are potentially targetable with drugs that are either already on the shelf or in clinical trials. So the UC Genome Project, or Urothelial Carcinoma Genomic Analysis to Improve Patient Outcomes in Research, is a project that really has co-equal aims. And the first aim is a real clinical patient-driven one. So patients' tumors are analyzed, and those tumors are then determined to either have or not have certain genetic events that could potentially represent targets for either novel therapies in the context of clinical trials or targeted therapies that may exist outside of the context of clinical trials but may be relevant to the particular genetic event. The other aim, again a co-equal one, is research. And so part of this study is to develop a biorepository for patients with metastatic urothelial cancer. And these patients will have specimens including DNA, RNA, paraffin-embedded tissue, and blood stored. And the goal of this is to be able to perform down the line collaborative, translational scientific research to ultimately drive the field forward.
There are 2 main goals for this study. The first goal is to look at DNA material from a sample of your tumor and to provide your doctor with information on your tumor's DNA. The second goal is to store some of your tumor tissue and blood, called biospecimens, and data from your medical records and information about your tumor. The biospecimens and information will be available for researchers to continue to study urothelial cancer. Researchers will look at certain changes in your tumor's DNA to see if these changes are related to your cancer or how well you respond to your cancer treatment. Your tumor's genetic research results will be provided to you through your treating doctor. Sometimes when researchers identify certain genetic changes in a patient's tumor sample, this information can be used to refer the patient to a clinical study or to help the treating doctor choose the next treatment for this patient. It is also possible researchers will not find any genetic changes that could guide therapy. Your biospecimens will be labeled with a unique code number and will not identify you by name. Information from your medical records will be stored along with your biospecimens. Only research personnel will have access to the data linking your tissue biospecimens with these records. You will not be identified in any report or publication about research using your biospecimens. If you decide to be in this study, you'll be one of about 200 people with biospecimens and information collected in the study. You may be eligible for this study if you have urothelial cancer of the bladder, urethra, ureter, or renal pelvis. There are other criteria that must be met to enroll in this study. Talk to your doctor to learn more. A full description of this study can be found at www.clinicaltrials.gov using trial number 02643043.